So you may think your injury is just a coincidence, but did you know there's actually factors which influence injuries and your recovery? Alright guys, it's David here from Cryotherapy UK Sheffield, and in today's video I'm going to be discussing the factors which affect injury, repair and recovery. So whenever harm is done to the body, it is likely that it will result in an injury. And the rate at which somebody goes through the recovery process can vary from person to person. And there's a lot of factors which can influence the recovery process. So I'm going to go through all of these to let you know which ones you can use to your advantage to prevent injury and help you recover a lot quicker. So the first one is age. Even though we all hate to admit it, as we get older, the body recovers a lot slower. So the reason being is because as we get older, the body's levels of collagen increases in the connective tissue and there is a reduction in elastin. So due to this, the body is less effective at preventing unwanted movement, which then results in injury. Additionally, as we get older, our bones get thinner and weaker and lighter, which makes them more susceptible to a fracture. Reason being, a healthy bone is thick within inside. However, as we get older, more holes start to appear inside the bone. So as those holes increase and get bigger, this makes the bones a lot more lighter, weaker and more brittle. So we're more susceptible to fractures. Also, as we get older, our body's neuromuscular efficiency is reduced. Therefore, we are less explosive and less able to react to quick stimuluses due to a reduction in fast twitch fibers. So an increase in age has been linked to reduced activity. However, studies have shown that if we can stay active in our older life, then we are more likely to reduce injury and recover quicker. So reason being is with our genetic makeup and our body growth, from the ages from where we're born all the way up to 30, our body is on an increase. So all the nutrients, all our growth, bones, muscles, they all get better with age. But once we hit the age of 30, we then start to go on a decline. So we call this the aging process. So now there's no actual way to stop that curve, which would go up. And once you hit 30, it goes down. However, if we are fit, healthy and active, we can actually slow this curve down. So we can't stop it, but we can actually slow it down. So for example, if you are consistently training, when you have the body of when you are at the age of 40, rather than having the body of a 40-year-old, if you're fit, healthy and active, you may have the body of a 30-year-old or younger. So keeping fit, keeping healthy, increasing our muscle and making our bones and our muscles stronger can actually lead us to have a fitter, healthy body later in life. Now, it's very important that if you try to do this at an older age, it'll be much harder. So try to get this physical activity in as young as you can, because as we all know, prevention is better than cure. Okay, so the next factor on our list is gender. So with gender, this can predispose us to certain injuries, okay? One of them being knee injuries and ACL injuries, okay? So women are more susceptible to these type of injuries. The reason being is because of the Q angle. So the Q angle is the ratio from where your hip and your knee is aligned. Because women have much wider hips and wider pelvises than men, their pelvis sits on the outside of a knee, whereas males will have a much straighter body shape. So the knee and the hip are more aligned. So due to the pelvis and the hip being more to the lateral side of the knee, this puts a lot of pressure on the knee. So whenever women are doing sport, they are likely to cause damage to the knee or something is about to pop out in place. So where we can stop and prevent that is making sure the muscles around the knee are a lot stronger and a lot stable. So another factor which makes females more susceptible to injury is the female athlete triad. So the female athlete triad is 3 conditions which predispose women to injury. One being bone mineral density, due to osteopenia and osteoporosis, low energy levels due to restricted eating disorders and simply not eating enough, and menstrual disturbance due to irregular periods and amenorrhea. So studies have shown that females who show 2 out of 3 of these conditions are likely to result in stress fractures and are more susceptible to stress fracture injuries. So it's very important that we are aware of these and we're getting the correct nutrition and also improving our bone mineral density through just resistance training and activity. So next on our list is body composition. So our body composition is made up of a lot of things. So for example, we have bone density, muscles, fat mass, fat-free mass, and our organs. So in order to have a healthy body composition, the body needs a makeup of each of these. So one of the main factors affecting our body composition in relation to injury is bone mineral density. So as we spoke about earlier, the lighter and less bone mineral density we have, the weaker our bones are, making them more brittle and weaker and less effective at absorbing impact, therefore resulting in breaks and fractures. Additionally, muscle imbalance can also be related to predisposition to injury. So if there's not enough muscle on our body, the body is too weak to cope with the demands and stresses from daily activities and physical activity. Similarly, if our bodies are too strong in an area, we can also create imbalances, which then create muscle weaknesses elsewhere and then lead to injuries. For example, if we have a strong over-dominant chest, that could then relate and link to injuries in our neck, back and shoulders. So we need to make sure our bodies are proportionally imbalanced when it comes to muscle tissue. Additionally, if we have too much fat mass or fat-free mass, such as muscle, then it also restricts and limits our range of movement. So due to our limited range of movement, if we become too large in a certain area, it restricts our movement. Therefore, the body needs to compensate in order to help the body move. So due to this restricted range of movement, this then limits the ability for the joints and the muscles in the body to move. So then we'll need to compensate, which will then create issues around the body, which may lead to injury. So the next on our list is anatomy. So our anatomy is our genetic makeup of how our body is formed. A person's anatomy can provide a mechanical advantage, however, it can also be a disadvantage. The anatomy is all based on leg length, arm length, etc. It also can be influenced from conditions such as scoliosis. Now, if our anatomy is imbalanced, so we have a shorter leg, one leg shorter than the other, our arms longer than the other, or an S-bend in our spine, our body needs to compensate in order to correct those imbalances and keep the body stable and moving. So due to these imbalances, that then puts compensatory patterns into our movement patterns and also puts strain in certain areas of the body, which then can lead to injury. So it's a strange one with anatomy because there's not ultimately much that we can do to change the anatomy, but there's things that we can do to help manage and treat that. For example, using things such as insoles and getting correct treatment from a therapist. Next, we have diet and lifestyle. So in order for optimal growth and repair, a body needs a good, healthy, balanced diet. Reason being is the body uses all the nutrients from the foods that we eat in order to help build, grow and repair the body. So if the body's not getting sufficient nutrients or it's getting the wrong nutrients, then it can affect things such as our joint health. It can also affect the strength of our bone density and our muscles, which then can lead to injury. So it's very important that we get a healthy, balanced diet. Poor nutrition is likely to result in poor growth and poor repair. So it's important that we get the correct nutrients and macronutrients into our body. So activity levels and sporting participation is another factor which affects injury and repair. So if we are not doing enough activity, that then leads to muscle weakness in the body and making our body less physically able to perform everyday tasks. As well as we said, activity levels greatly affect body composition as well. So if you're not participating in enough activity, physical activity, there's likelihood that your body composition will be poor as well. Opposite to that, too much activity can also cause us to become injured and affect our recovery and repair. So if we train too much, we're putting a lot of stress on, a lot of strain on the body, which it can handle, and not giving enough time for it to rest and repair. So if we're not giving it enough time to rest and repair, the body then becomes fatigued, and then we can cause overtraining, which then when you go back into activity can result in injuries. Also, another factor which links to predisposition to injury is the type of activity we're doing. So for example, if we're involved in a certain sport, such as basketball or football, you might find that you may get a lot of knee injuries and ankle injuries due to the repetitive strain. Similarly, for a different sport such as boxing, you may get a lot of elbow and wrist pain. So it's common that certain sports have certain injuries. Similarly, this can also relate to work occupation as well. For example, a lot of builders and construction workers tend to suffer with a lot of knee pain. Similarly, if you work at a desk, you're likely to be suffering with a lot of neck and shoulder pain and back pain. So in my experience, I find that certain jobs carry their certain injuries, and so do certain sports as well. So therefore, you need to make sure you're doing everything in order to correct these injuries and prevent the injuries from happening. Additionally, leading a sedentary lifestyle and not doing enough activity can result in a deconditioned state of the body, and when any increased activity level is implemented, then that is likely to result in an injury. So the next on our list is rest and recovery. So again, like everything else, there needs to be a balance between rest and recovery and participation. So in order for the body to physically develop, we need sufficient rest and recovery. For example, if your body is tired and you're going back into training or going back into activity and it's not got its optimal repair back yet, then that can lead to poor growth and poor recovery, and also lead to another injury. So as I said with everything, there's a balance between optimal rest and activity. So in order for our injuries to repair enough or repair sufficiently, we need to be doing a certain level of activity. The reason being, if we're not doing enough activity, it can cause our injuries to stiffen up, which we don't want because it'll affect the range of motion. Therefore, we need to make sure that we're doing enough activity that's putting enough tensile stress on the soft tissues to help repair the injuries. So it's a fine line. There's a gray area what you want to work in. You want to work in a level which is enough so you're pushing your injury to its limits, but you don't want to take it too far and go overboard, which will re-aggravate and re-injure the body. The reason why we need this is because as we're moving and working the tissues, blood flow is then sent to the injured area, and in our blood flow and in our blood we have a lot of key nutrients which helps in recovery and repair. So if we're not putting that additional tensile stress on the tissues, then it cannot get that blood flow to the working tissues, or it'll be a lot slower and a lot longer. Also, if we're not getting in that added activity, then a lot of adhesions and scar tissue can build up which won't be broken down. So make sure we're staying active to deliver the key nutrients down to the injured area. So the last on our list is injury history. Okay, so once you have injured something, there's a likelihood that the weakness of that injury will remain present. Once an area of our body is injured, we can only get that to 80% of what it was. So if we, for example, have gone over on our ankle, then the stability and the strength will be 80% of what it originally was. So if we're not doing the correct rehab and treatment, getting enough growth and optimal repair, then our ankle injury will be less than that 80%. So there's a likelihood that we're going to go over it and re-injure it again, because it's not as stable as it once was before. Additionally to this, if you have a previous injury, this can also develop compensatory patterns for that injury and also lead to an imbalance in the body, as different muscles have to help and take over and assist in movement, which leads to another injury. So make sure you're very clear and you know your injury history when you're going to see a therapist, so they can get the optimal treatment for your injury. Also, there could be a lot of underlying problems due to the injury history that you may not consider. So even if you don't think that the injury is important, make sure you say it to your therapist, because it may actually be without you realizing. Okay guys, so that concludes today's video on the factors affecting injury repair and recovery. If you liked the video and found it useful, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Make sure you're following us on all social media platforms. As always, appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.